Matt, are you good? Started streaming, give me a second. We are live.
Good evening. Today is Thursday, February 22nd, 2024, and this is the Council Rock Education Committee meeting. My name is Nicole Khan, and I am the Education Chair. I would like to begin with roll call. Beginning to my left, please state your name and role.
My name is Andrea Mandel, Director of District Communications.
Matt Frederickson, Director of Information Technology.
Ed Tate, School Board.
Ryan Murphy, Special Education Supervisor.
Andy Sanko, Superintendent.
Nicole Crawford, Director of Elementary Education.
Al Fung, Director of Secondary Education.
Tammy Gary, Supervisor of Curriculum Instruction.
Joe Hidalgo, School Board.
Ann Hunter, School Board.
Michael Roosevelt, School Board.
Bob Rickey, School Board.
Tracy Osecki, School Board. Linda Stone, School Board.
Anthony Devlin, Director of Special Services.
Okay, thank you. If everyone has made sure there is an agenda down at that end of the table and a sign-in sheet if you haven't, it's coming around. Just a quick reminder to my fellow board members to, once the presentation is done or there's natural pauses for questions, if you would just raise your hand so I could call on you. For those of us that are sitting at home and listening, can follow the conversation. Thank you. And with that, I will turn it over to Ms. Crawford and Mr. Fung.
Wonderful, thank you and good evening. I just want to point out that we also have Mr. Ronnie Spring, our Director of Human Resources, as well as Mr. Tony Ratt, who is our Director of the Business Office. We're here this evening to engage in the discussion and listen in. So there is a change in the order of our agenda. We were asked to move full day kindergarten to the top of the agenda, which we are happy to do. So I'm just going to start with that slide. Okay. Full day kindergarten. So at our last education committee meeting, it was our first time bringing up the topic of full day kindergarten to the board, and we had some really good initial discussion. And we were pleased when we were asked to go and find some additional information, dive a little bit deeper into the topic of full day kindergarten, which we have done over the course of these last few weeks. I want to begin by sharing that we are very excited about the information that we've learned over these last few weeks, and certainly this evening we are going to be hopefully sharing some great insight, some information about what other school districts are doing currently who offer full day kindergarten. And I also want to take a minute and just share personally some different perspectives that I bring to the table when looking through, this information and researching and learning more about full day kindergarten. My first teaching position was in kindergarten over 2.5 decades ago. But I point that out this evening because I never forgot that experience. It really left a lasting mark on my educational career. And it does not ever escape me how important it is that we build a great foundational experience for our kindergartners, our youngest elementary students, 5 and 6-year-olds. And I'm really excited to help be a part of this work and to share it this evening. Also, the perspective of a building and district level administrator here in Council Rock, having a very good understanding of the current half-day program that we offer. And I also have the parent perspective that I bring to the discussion this evening because my 2 boys in another district also went through full day kindergarten. So I share that this evening just so you have a sense of my background and some of the discussion points that I'll be bringing to the discussion tonight. So it is my pleasure to introduce Dr. Ryan Murphy, who is a supervisor of special education in the district and also a school psychologist. We asked Dr. Murphy to complete a literature review on full day kindergarten. He's done some really great work and he's going to be sharing about that to start our presentation. Dr. Murphy?
Thanks very much, Mrs. Crawford. Thank you guys all very much for the opportunity to present this. And I would just echo Mrs. Crawford's sentiments in that we're very interested in going through the process and certainly encouraged by a lot of the information that we found. In terms of, to echo Mrs. Crawford's sentiments, my own background, I have the perspective of a former school psychologist as well as in being at the elementary level for 12 years. Now that I'm at the high school level, I've kind of seen the whole gamut of it, but I definitely remember my elementary days. And kind of the approach that we took in this and looking at the research was we wanted to do kind of a meta-analysis of what's out there. And what we found was, I think, a little surprising in that I thought we would see lots of studies done in the last year, 2 years, 3 years. And really what we found was there was a lot of, the body of this research was done probably early 2000s, mid 2000s. You'll see in the references page that there are some more recent studies. There's some from 2020, 2019. It seems that most of the most recent research is actually coming out of Ontario in Canada, which is interesting. Now, those findings have been consistent with what a lot of the research from here in the US have stated as well. And what we wanted to do was really break it up into, hey, what does the research say in terms of what's the impact on academic achievement as well as socio-emotional functioning? And what we found in terms of the area of academic achievement is that there are definite gains in literacy and math that students who attend full-day kindergarten in comparison to half-day kindergarten experience. I think that's a wonderful thing. Those gains are prevalent in the end of kindergarten. They are present in first grade and second grade. They are present in third grade. What the research indicates is that they do tend to tail off by the end of third grade. There was a particularly interesting study that was a little more recent that took a look specifically at executive functioning skills. That's an area that we hear more and more about in education in the field of neuroscience as being really crucial to being a successful learner. And we know that students who attended full-day kindergarten in comparison to half-day kindergarten exhibited gains, particularly in the area of working memory and cognitive flexibility. Again, those gains were noted in kindergarten and first grade. They leveled out a little bit in second grade. If I'm putting on my school psychologist hat for a second, there were many students that I tested over the years, and I would say that the district tests over the years in the end of first grade, second grade, and third grade. So I'm thinking this through. It would be reasonable to surmise that a full-day program might enable some of those students who were in need of being evaluated and ultimately given services as a student with disability because they were below grade level academically. If they have full-day kindergarten, there's a chance, it's hard to say how many students that would be, but that a percentage of those students would not perhaps need to be tested or need to be labeled as a child having a specific learning disability. Some of the research indicates in terms of demographics that the positive outcomes that were found were larger for more economically disadvantaged school districts, whereas other of the research noted that there were no differences based on demographic information. One of the particular sources that we found, the NEA, the National Education Association, they seem to be very big proponents of full-day kindergarten. They really talk about it as a critical step in student success for later grades. If we switch our lens to social development, we see a little bit of the same in terms of we definitely see some positive associations, particularly with the areas of self-confidence, how students approach their teacher, as well as their ability to get along with other peers. I think that's a really strong, interesting correlation. We see in terms of the level of independence, more inclusive research, inconclusive research. So, one of the ideas was if students are attending full day that they would be more independent. The studies that we reviewed, at least up to this point, have not indicated a relationship there. There was some research, I think this is really interesting, and this is going to dovetail with what Mrs. Crawford is going to talk about later in terms of purposeful play, but some of the research indicated that students who attend full day might be a little tired or worn out at the end of the day and might actually develop some more negative attitudes to school. That being said, that research is particularly a little bit older, and the more emergent research is really in the area of purposeful play and just how crucial that is in terms of not so much the content of being a student, but the process of being a student. How do I plan things? How do I stay organized? How do I navigate a dispute with a peer who may want to be playing with the same toy or at the same center as me? And a lot of the research talks about, obviously, if there's full day programming, that there would be more time built in or allowed for that purposeful play, which might enrich those interactions with the students. This is a list of the references. I apologize for the size of them, but I'd be happy to provide any of those if you guys would like copies of them as well. You can see really a large majority of the research was from the early 2000s. One of the more seminal articles I would point you to is the 2010 study. It was done by Duke University. That was a very large meta-analysis that was done at the time. And then the more recent one that I referenced this evening was the 2019 study done by Pelletieri with the longitudinal approach. That's the one from Ontario.
Thank you, Dr. Murphy. So at this point, I'm going to share a little bit about our ongoing school district consultation. So as soon as we were asked to find out more information about full-day kindergarten, we did not waste any time consulting with nearby school districts, some in the county, some beyond the county. And this is just the initial list of those that we've either had contact with, who have shared resources with us, or I'll speak a little bit later about one particular district, Souderton, where I actually already did a site visit to see full-day kindergarten up and running, and I consulted with about 7 of their team members, including kindergarten teachers, the superintendent, their curriculum and instruction supervisor, and beyond that. So that was really time well spent and eye-opening. I do want to reinforce that this list will continue to grow as we are growing our own knowledge about full-day kindergarten. We will definitely be continuing to reach out to school districts and also looking to send even our kindergarten teachers, if we get to that point of the process, to see full-day kindergarten and to collaborate with other teachers in various districts. So this is just an initial list that will continue to grow. So full-day kindergarten, the potential academic and social impacts. So this evening, you're going to hear us reference the whole child a lot, as well as the gift of time. So when we talk about the whole child and what we need to do to educate the whole child, looking through the lens of a kindergartner, means balancing developmentally what do they need to build those foundational skills at the very start of their educational journey. So that can include academic, which we're going to be speaking to this evening, as well as socialization and language development. It's everything. So when we talk about full-day kindergarten, we're looking through that whole idea of more time. If we had more time and we could build a schedule any way that we wanted to be able to support the whole child, what would that look like? And I will be sharing a little bit more about some models and different schedule ideas that we have. But the gift of time is really important to provide the necessary academic and social and emotional support that kindergartners need. Also, it's important to point out, and Gary's going to speak to the curricular aspect of full-day kindergarten shortly, but right now in a half-day program, the curriculum that we're using has to be modified quite a bit in order to be able to get everything in 2.5 hours that we need to. So looking at more time allows us to look at what we can teach students and can we dive a little bit deeper into the curriculum, as well as, again, hitting on those other important foundational skills. Creating a schedule that is reliable and consistent. It's important to keep in mind, again, from the perspective of a 5-year-old or a 6-year-old, transitions can be really tough. Transitions can be tough for an adult, let alone a kindergartner who may be coming from a babysitter in the morning, or from home, or from another a preschool provider perhaps, where they may have 1 or 2 teachers there transitioning to our afternoon program. There are a lot of transitions. A full day program would certainly offer less transitions in a 5 or 6-year-old's day, and we think that could be very good for a student. Also looking at the consistent support that they would be able to get. Sometimes we hear from a school district perspective that a student may have a difficult time in the morning and they're coming in with some of those challenges in the afternoon, and it's hard to pull all those pieces together. What happened? Who do they reach out to? Was it, are we calling home, the preschool provider? So again, that consistent and reliable schedule, we believe would be very helpful to support these students. This would also offer teachers more opportunities to deliver one-on-one personalized instruction. Ms. Gary and myself have talked a lot this year about MTSS, the multi-tiered system of support, which means providing students with the support that they need and making sure all students get that support. So in a longer day, again, that gift of time, we would be able to provide some additional one-on-one support. And again, we can delve into that a little bit later in the presentation in terms of what that would look like and sound like. It was really important to our team to solicit the feedback from our kindergarten teachers pretty early on in this process. They're critical to this process, and so right away we reached out and created a survey, and we asked some critical questions of them and said, you're just at the stage of gathering information, but we really want your feedback and what you see as potential benefits of full-day kindergarten and possible obstacles or challenges. And again, you'll see many of the similar ideas that I just spoke to in terms of possible benefits that this would bring to our district. Increased academic skills, more time for instructional interventions, maximizing our current curriculum. Going back to that example I gave where we're modifying what we already have quite a bit. It would allow more time to be able to maximize the curriculum that we already have available for to our kindergartners. Possible increase in being prepared for first grade, and the opportunity to strengthen students, again, social and emotional growth as well as academic, going back to that whole idea of educating the whole child and meeting them where they are developmentally. Possible obstacles that the kindergarten teachers were thinking about, they talked about, staffing. How would that look? And those are certainly conversations that we continue to have at a cabinet level as well. Developing an age-appropriate schedule. And I am going to spend a good amount of time talking about the schedule this evening because that's a critical piece to this. And addressing space challenges, which again we'll get to a little further in the presentation. At this point, Ms. Gary's going to talk a little bit about what I just briefly hit on in terms of the curricular considerations. We do have a curriculum already and programs that we use at the kindergarten level, and she's going to talk about what that could look like with full-day kindergarten.
As Nicole's just said, the curriculum is already in place for half-day kindergarten. So Reading Horizons is the program we use, K-5. Wonders for Language Arts isn't used in kindergarten right now. With the possibility of having full day, we would expand that program to a greater level. So both of those programs, in first grade we have both of them, and in second grade we have both. So being developmentally appropriate, which is specific in regards to the children's age, you're looking at things like phonemic awareness, where you're really looking at the letters and learning sounds. So oral development is very important. Mrs. Crawford is going to talk more about the purposeful play. It's a big part of being developmentally appropriate is students hearing the language being spoken and then having the opportunity to interact with each other and use language as well. So it's not just the curriculum you think of reading and writing in a traditional sense, it's having the opportunity to grow developmentally appropriate practices. With math, it's counting, it's using manipulatives, it's learning about the numbers. So again, having the gift of time to practice and to learn. The other things that we're working on is the hand-eye coordination, because those are developing the neural pathways. And for reading, the science of reading is we're really heading into. Those are the skills we need. So developing fine motor skills. If you remember the old days, dating myself, the tying of shoes, not that kids' shoes have shoelaces anymore, but it was really to develop fine motor skills to get them to be able to hold and write with a pencil. So the fine motor skills and the gross motor skills of moving around and playing help them develop so that when they're ready for reading, they're in the process with those. So you have the eye-hand coordination and the speaking and listening skills. For math, again, with Bridges, we already have the program. It would be expanding access to it over time. With science and social studies, at this level, it's an introductory level. So with science, it's in the exploration phase. And with social studies, it looks at the holidays and important people and things like that. So again, it just gives more time to delve in. The other thing that Nicole'll talk more about is also having the opportunity to engage in more of what we call the specials. for art, music, library, things like that, to have kids, again, have the socialization and have the opportunity to learn and grow and do more things at the introductory level.
Great, thank you. So now talking about the half-day versus a possible full-day schedule. And again, I want to reinforce that when I speak to the full-day schedule, these are just ideas that we've gathered after collaborating with some other school districts and collaborating amongst ourselves about possible additions to the schedule. So I'd like to start by looking at the half-day schedule. So generally speaking, this is what either a morning or an afternoon schedule includes. This does not include the natural breaks that already take place during the school day, but again, these are just very consistent aspects of the day that you would see in any kindergarten half-day program. Time during arrival, where students are coming into the classroom, usually there's some center work that's happening, some collaborative work time. Circle time, which is similar to in the upper grades, a classroom meeting where they're sitting in a circle, being greeted, everyone greets each other, so it's a nice way to really build that classroom community. Then ELA, English Language Arts, recess, snack, math, and then they get the special time, which is either library or music. And again, that's just a very general look at what a half-day session would look like currently in Council Rock. Moving over to possible full-day kindergarten additions. There are certain aspects of the schedule that would remain. Again, some kind of arrival, center time for students. The circle time, in speaking with kindergarten teachers, they feel that right now that's often rushed, where students are coming in and there's a lot to do, a lot to get done in 2.5 hours. So I can't stress the importance of that circle time and the greetings and the opportunity for students to socialize with each other, look at their partner next to them and say, good morning, how are you? Those are all skills that the kindergarten teachers are modeling with students. And again, just going back to children are learning in kindergarten how to be students. So all of that is done during that circle time. So that would be expanded. As Ms. Gary just referenced, language arts and math you see would be expanded. We are considering right now the idea of additional specials. What would that look like? How many would that be? What are other districts currently implementing in their full-day kindergarten program? Obviously, cost is a big variable with that, in that discussion. So that is something else that we would need to take a look at. Expanded recess. Right now in our primary grades, we have 2 recess periods, so we would be looking at expanding. Right now they have 1 in kindergarten. This would be expanded to possibly another recess time built into the day. They would have a lunch, which would be new. Again, expanded math time. Ms. Gary spoke about more opportunities to integrate topics related to science and social studies into the full-day kindergarten day. And you've heard several times tonight about the idea of purposeful play. And I'm really excited to just take a few minutes now and share a little bit about what I've learned this week, in fact, going over to Souderton School District to see purposeful play in action. And so just to share a little bit about what this is when teachers create opportunities for students to collaborate, to socialize, to play. It's learning through play. And what I thought was really interesting about it is that it's not something that is done on a whim. It is very much planned, and the kindergarten teachers in this particular school district were a big part of creating lessons that related to this purposeful play block. So in this particular example that I'm going to give you, the theme of the week, what I saw was called Pet Shop. And so there were stations all over the room, all relating to a pet shop and what you would see there. And before I even get to what I saw the students doing during that time, which was really impressive, the team shared what happened before I came in. So they typically take a day or two to do a very quick mini lesson, which is what we do already in kindergarten, where you launch the theme of the week. So they talk about, we're going to learn about a veterinarian. What's a vet shop? Why do you go to a vet shop? Building their background knowledge. Has anyone been to the vet? Why did you go to the vet? So those types of questions happen early on. But then they plan activities, again, learning through play, and stations that directly relate to standards. So in this particular session that I saw, they showed me the standards, the STEEL standards that this particular activity aligned to, as well as early childhood standards. So I think that's also really important to point out that, again, it was even more planned out than I imagined before going to visit. The particular stations that I saw in 2 different kindergarten classes, there was an art station where they were doing art, some pictures related to different animals that were sick, or going to visiting the vet that day. There was a block station where it looked like one little boy was building a bed for a cat that was on a bed next to it that was clearly sick and was resting. And then there was another station where they were actually reviewing real x-rays. And they were talking, the teachers, about having an actual volunteer come in who, before retiring, was a veterinarian. So again, that was just another layer to this. Each day there was a new, fresh activity and idea that was being offered. Then there was a play kitchen area that they turned into a vet clinic area. The children were excited, they were engaged. This team was remarkable in the way that they talked about how they built this from the ground up. And certainly, I do want to point out that they spent a long time collaborating with other school districts about their purposeful play, and they made it their own. There's research also, as Dr. Murphy shared, that supports this and incorporating it into a full-day kindergarten program. And every school district, what I'm learning, it may look a little bit different. And so if given the opportunity, this would be something that we would want to work with our team here, our kindergarten teachers, our specialists. How would this look in Council Rock? This was a really great example, again, of educating the whole child. They were collaborating, the students were socializing, they were excited, they were answering questions, they were working together and talking about, what happens at the vet clinic. And again, I was especially impressed with when they were looking at the scientific end of it, at the x-rays and the bones. So again, there are a lot of ties to the curriculum, to the standards. So this purposeful play by no means is meant to be something that is just, go ahead and do it on your own. There are times for that during the school day. There's a time and place for students to just have free play and have that opportunity as well. But the purposeful play, or what they called Play Shop in Souderton, was very impressive and something that I'd want to look a little further into if given that opportunity. And now Mr. Devlin's going to talk about some information related to special education and full-day kindergarten.
So it is very exciting, the opportunity to team discuss full-day kindergarten. With special education in mind, there's some things that come to my mind immediately. Number one is just that everybody knows that we already provide a full-day option for students in our low incidence program. So we already have a skeleton built for students in terms of special education. But when we go forward looking for special education, one of the things that would be afforded to these students in our programs already would be increased inclusivity with their general education peers in some of the special classes or core classes where they could fit in and make meaningful progress. A full-day kindergarten would give additional options for our families who are contemplating more time in the early intervention system. So when parents of students with special needs are looking for kindergarten, they have to wait. Do we want an additional year in early intervention in another program, or can we look to the school? A lot of times our parents opt for early services at Easter seals or where have you, because they don't want to send their child to a half-day program. There's other things we need to look at too when we're doing full-day kindergarten for our students. Child find, so we will be responsible for more child find issues, so we would have to look to see what our psychological services are there to support our students. Related services such as occupational therapy, as Tammy mentioned, tying shoelaces and so forth. So we would have to look to see how do we support these students now in a full-day setting that would be doing more fine motor skills that they may not be used to. And our school health workers, our nurses, our staff nurses and so forth. We would have to look at how do we support a greater population of our kindergarten students who may have issues with feeding and taking care of themselves during the day. So there are some of the concerns or some of the issues that we would look at in terms of special education for a full-day model.
Great, thank you. So now we're going to talk a little bit about the impact on space and schools. And I think it's really, again, critical to just remind everyone that it was important to us to give all of you in the community a snapshot of information and to give you as much information as we can at this point in the process. But these numbers that I will be sharing shortly are very fluid. And it's really meant to, again, start this discussion, and we do continue, if given the opportunity, to go a little bit deeper in finding out how we can best support this in our schools from a space, from the whole sense of space and what we have available and what we need. In order to do that, we decided to look at first grade enrollment, because right now, many parents, as you would expect, they send their children to a private school, perhaps, or they have other plans that they put in place for kindergarten, and then they go ahead and they send their children to Council Rock in first grade. This shows a 5-year average of how many first graders we get every year that did not attend Council Rock for kindergarten. So you can see on average, it's just over 200 new first graders that come to Council Rock every year. Again, we decided to capture this information, first grade enrollment, in order to help us just start to think through what space we would need and what space we would need to continue to explore further if we were to bring full-day kindergarten to Council Rock. So I'm going to go through each of these columns and give a couple examples, and again, at the end of the presentation, we're happy to address any questions. So the first column you can see is current first grade enrollment taken from October. So again, these numbers may look different now in schools compared to October. The next column, projected classrooms needed for full-day kindergarten based on those first grade enrollment numbers. Next column is what we currently have in our buildings for our kindergarten program that's half-day. So doing the math, additional projected full-day classrooms that would be needed, and then finally projected homeroom staff increase with full-day kindergarten. Now, there are a lot of variables to this that I want to point out. First of all, looking at that last column, you can see I noted at the bottom that just giving you an idea of the potential, how many homeroom teachers we would need for full-day kindergarten based on these numbers. That does not include support staff, special education staff, specialists. This is just, again, one snapshot to give you some additional information and to get all of us moving in a direction where we better understand what needs we would have from a facility aspect as well as staffing. And I'll take an example, say for example, Goodnow Elementary School. So these numbers don't tell the whole picture, don't tell the whole story. So if we needed 4 classrooms for full-day kindergarten, and we currently have 2 kindergarten classrooms at Goodnow Elementary School. Well, what you can't see on here that I know of is that we also have 2 kindergarten champions classrooms, currently full-size classrooms being used at Goodnow. So that's another variable that if we ended up having full-day kindergarten, we would no longer need champions for kindergarten enrichment, and there you would capture those 2 classrooms needed for full-day kindergarten. Again, these numbers do not account for if we have additional specials, the additional specialists that we would have to find, like if we added, art and some other specials, we would need to find the classrooms for those special areas. So this is meant to just give a very general idea so that you had an understanding of what we have available in our buildings currently. And we're still working through on our end, through our conversations and working directly with the elementary principals. Do you have the space? Do you not? what are some other nuances that we need to know? That's the stage that we're at right now on our end as a team, better understanding these numbers and how it relates to the actual day-to-day in those buildings. So we are working with principals right now, again, to look at this and to have those conversations, but again, looking at first grade numbers, that's probably going to give us the most accurate idea of what we would be looking at for full day kindergarten enrollment numbers. Full day kindergarten next steps. So this list does not encompass everything. It's just meant to give the community and all of you an idea of where we are with our thinking, with possible next steps in exploring the idea of full day kindergarten in Council Rock. The first, establishing a timeline for implementation to present at the March Education Committee meeting. So as you know, our cabinet team and others beyond the cabinet team are working really hard to see what would work, what would we need to do, what would a possible timeline look like, so we would be able to present that at the next Education Committee meeting. Establishing the impact on transportation, better understanding that. We have our midday runs right now, so again, looking from a cost standpoint, what would that, any possible cost savings, what would we need to do in terms of additional runs? That's something that we need to explore further. Determining staffing, curricular assessment, and technology needs. Again, a lot of great discussion, productive discussion has already taken place, but we need to delve a little bit deeper into that. Projected costs for full day kindergarten, and that's something that, as you know, Mr. Rapp is here listening tonight, but that's something that we are going to be discussing and looking at for the March finance meeting, kind of an overview to better, give an understanding of what the cost would possibly entail for full day kindergarten. Form a committee of stakeholders. So that's a really important piece in this process that has not happened yet. Again, we were very, very excited to further explore full day K, but that is not a committee that is together just yet. But again, people are aware that we are gathering this information, our kindergarten teachers, our principals, our specialists, but that committee would be critical in the process. Creating a community survey to get community feedback, obviously, parent feedback. Determine additional specials, we spoke about that earlier. Continue collaboration with other districts. Again, I'd really like to be able to send some kindergarten teachers out to other districts to actually see something like I saw this week, because seeing it really makes everything come alive. And complete a revision to the kindergarten report card. I'm looking at Ms. Gary because we're in the throes of that right now, and that's some really important work that's going to be happening this spring with the elementary report card, making some revisions and updating it. So that's work that's already going to be taking place, and this would be another piece to that. So at this time, we are happy to answer questions.
Okay.
Thank you, Ms. Crawford, that was terrific. Thank you. Two quick questions. One is the stakeholders committee, would that be an internal committee?
That would include community members and parents as
Thank
well, board directors.
And if 16 additional teachers were required, do you have a guesstimate in terms of how many specialists? I mean, is there a ratio like 5-to-1 or something?
We do look at how many students are in a particular school, and that's something that we would work with human resources to determine how many specialists we would need, and that's something that the principals would be a part of that discussion as well.
Thanks.
Oh, I was like, wait a second.
Yeah.
Oh, all right. Ms. Oseki.
Okay.
So as well.
Thank you. That was terrific. I'm really excited about this possibility. I have a lot to say, but I think the first thing and the only thing I'll take up time with now is that I'm really excited to see the emphasis on purposeful play. I said in the last meeting, I have a kindergartner. It is a long time for a kid to be for a 5-year-old to be at school. They definitely are tired out, as some kids more than others by the end of the day. I think that we are currently doing a disservice to kindergartners in our afternoon program because they are already tired when they get to school. You know, I mean, that's a time that last year they were taking a nap at that time, and, you know, by 12 o'clock or 1 o'clock when they're getting to school, they're already like, you know, not absorbing as much as their morning counterparts. So I'm excited about the possibility, and I think that if we do this, I want to make sure that we are doing it correctly in an age-appropriate way, and the emphasis on purposeful play, I think, is terrific. So I'll stop there, but thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Rosenfeld?
Thank you. I have several questions, but I think to start off, this is a topic, you're talking about making an investment into children's education and bettering a school district. It's exciting for all board members, regardless of what your personal feelings are. And I expect a lot of that spreads over to administration. So with that, I do have a couple of questions, because I think that it's important that even though we may be excited about this, that we temper and evaluate it properly. And so, Mrs. Crawford, I think that this is a great first step. You really bit off a big chunk and approached it from multiple angles, so I appreciate that. I have a question for Dr. Brian Murphy. To start off with, what do you attribute the temporary gains in some of these areas to? Is this attributed to the purposeful play, or is there something else that attributes to these temporary gains, and why is it temporary?
I think it's twofold in terms of what contributes to it. If I put on my psychologist hat for a second, if I think of, the success of a student is based on both content and process. So, what is taught in terms of the content is being taught, as well as what's the process of being a learner. So, how do you line up? How do you share with a peer? How do you navigate a dispute, like I was saying, when two peers want to play with the same toy? So I think what a lot of the literature talks about is by virtue of having more time with the students, you can increase both the content knowledge that you're disseminating to them, as well as just the process of what it looks like to be a student. And I think that process aspect is where the purposeful play comes into account. A lot of the research talks again about things like cognitive flexibility, or the ability to stop doing one activity to move to maybe a less preferred activity. And those are the types of things that can be rehearsed or practiced in purposeful play. That additional time would be to be able to be devoted to that. One of the things that was really interesting in the literature review was that in terms of the temporary gains, people talked about, well, how can we mitigate those? Or how can we, I think the NEA even refers to it as how can we combat fade out, quote unquote. And it's all about how do we structure it so that it's developmentally appropriate. Because if you were to just implement a full day program in isolation, or now not taking into context other variables for the development of the child, that's when I think you see fade out. When you can do it in the context of a more holistic plan, including purposeful play, that's when we tend to see those things ameliorated a little bit.
Why do you think that they're temporary? Is that the fade out element? Or?
That's what they talk about in the literature. Certainly, I mean, if you're exposed to more content and process early on, you'll see those gains. Those other students that were not exposed to that, theoretically, they could still be getting those in first and second and third grade. It's just that it might take till third grade to reach those students.
Okay. So my last question for you, and I have one for Ms. Crawford. The body of research that you submitted or that you reviewed for this, does that represent a broad spectrum of the positives and the negatives, the pros and the cons of peer researched elements? Or was there a little bit of, I mean, obviously, there's probably a lot there. So to some level, you have to pick and choose. And I thought that what you produced as a result of the review seemed to me as a pretty even split of some pro, some some against. But we also know that I think a lot of studies that are reviewed can be manipulated to either be over pro or over negative. So does this represent a good totality of everything, or is this more of a broad spectrum, or is it sort of steered one way or the other?
It's a great question, because I think you talk about, data can be used in different ways.
Right.
I think when I took a look at the research, my original thought was I was going to group studies into ones that were 100% pro, 100% con, and ones in the middle. And what I found was I couldn't do that grouping because they all had nuances and mixes within each of them. So I guess what that tells me from a certain standpoint is that there weren't a lot of aberrant outliers within the studies that I checked. Overall, I think the message that the body that I reviewed was yes, there are gains. Yes, those gains can tend to fade out, to use their language, by third grade. But the considerations that can happen in the interim are quite important for children. And as long as something's designed in a developmentally appropriate way to take advantage of that, good advantage of that time, some good things can come from it.
So we talked about transitions, and my understanding from looking at a lot of curriculum across our school district, as well as interactions with children in other areas non-academically, is that transitions have always been presented as a positive because it provides a mental and a physical break that enables to gain kids' attentions again, to refocus and then focus on something, and then you have another break. Hence the reasons for recess and snack or lunch times, or even walking down the hall and seeing a different teacher. Sitting in a lecture hall is something more we're accustomed to at higher education, and there's a reason for that. If you start lecturing kindergartners, for example, for a full day, they're probably not going to get any temporary gains. So transitions seem to be a good thing. This was the first time that I heard that transition might be a bad thing. So I wanted to just sort of ask a little bit more perspective on that.
Absolutely, I can clarify. In speaking about the transitions, I was talking about going from half day, like a morning where you're with a sitter at home, at another school, on the bus, heading to an elementary school in Council Rock, and that can be tough on many students, and it's tough sometimes as the teacher when they're coming in. You don't really have a clear picture of what, for example, their morning looked like, or something upset the child for whatever reason. Transitions during the school day are very, very good and very much needed for kindergarten for the reasons I spoke about earlier, about those natural breaks and balancing with your schedule, the academic with the social and opportunities, and really developing all of those skills and how to be an actual student. That happens through those natural, if you want to call them breaks, social opportunities. Again, circle time's a great example, but what I was referencing, Mr. Roosevelt, was more about having consistency with a teacher, the school, walking in every day at the same time, being with the same peers. There are so many benefits to that, and there are students, not all, but there are students who do struggle with their days currently broken into the two halves, wherever they are before they come or wherever they go after they leave the kindergarten session. So that was more what I meant by the transitions.
That's helpful. And my last question,
Sure.
just to play devil's advocate for a moment. A lot of that research seems to point out that purposeful play is a big benefit. So couldn't we integrate purposeful play in half-day kindergarten programs? Is it already there? Wouldn't that be a huge benefit to our children?
The challenge from a teacher's perspective would be the time. In order to do it, again, I'm not an expert at purposeful play, but in speaking with the team from Saturday, spending a good chunk of time with them this week, they work 45-minute sessions for their daily purposeful play that they said is non-contingent. That happens, it's that important, that good for students, that important to the teachers, that they make sure that that 45-minute block of time is in. I think it would be difficult, there could be some aspects of it happening already in certain kindergarten classrooms. We have an outstanding kindergarten team and they do great things, but a formalized block of time for 45 minutes, I do believe in the current model, it would be really hard to fit that in the schedule.
Interesting. That's it for now.
Mr. Hickey?
Yeah, I have a lot of questions and concerns or whatever. First of all, thank you, everybody, for, enlightening all of us about, that presentation was fantastic. It, covered every kind of base that you would want to cover, and I'm not sure if this is the right time or the place. As most of you probably know, I'm the one who's going to be needing the convincing that all-day kindergarten is a worthwhile effort. One thing that maybe you could possibly do for me, though, to try to help me when you were talking about, and my biggest concern was we're here to educate kids, and if by third grade those gains are negated, then what's the purpose of having this education or bringing all this into the district, especially when we have greater needs at this time with our current student population. We keep talking about the learning loss and the different things that we're lacking, and I met with parents recently, talking about English language issues or maybe things there. Like, we don't even have enough specialists in our current situation to handle the kids that we have, and I'm just wondering if, when it all comes down, when we have to flush all this out, maybe we're better off putting our resources into the 5,000 students that we already have, as opposed to the ones who we don't have. I don't want to say don't have, they're here for half a day. Because I know one of the concerns that was brought up was, well, if we don't offer it, the kids aren't going to come here. Well, I believe that what you showed me, where we're getting 200 students every year, I don't know if that's necessarily the case. The kids are coming, they are coming here. I have great concerns about the number of people and the space that's required. I mean, it for sure will require a complete redistricting of this school. One of the regions that I represent is Wrightstown, which has those concerns. And my concern, as their concern, is that Wrightstown population may be totally moved out. And we could just rename Wrightstown Richboro North, as the students are going to have to be moved because there's not enough space in them now. So how are we going to fit 16 more classrooms and incorporate Wrightstown in that? So like I said, I have a lot of concerns. And like I said, my main one is taking care of the kids that we have here. And maybe we're better served, like I said, using our resources or funds that we're going to need to educate the kids that we have, that are struggling now in first, second, third, and fourth grade. Maybe we need to add more specialists at the elementary level so we can alleviate that problem as opposed to kindergarten. And I guess my final thing is, it was funny, and you can back me up at that end of the table. At our last meeting, we heard a lot of people talking about, oh, I'll do anything for these kindergarten kids. Just let me know what I can do. Anything that I can do. And I muttered under my breath, pay for it. You did hear me say that, right?
You say.
And I thought about it. And I don't know if it's legal, ethical, or whatever, but for those students who want the all-day kindergarten, can they pay for it? Or is that not allowable by the state of Pennsylvania? And I'm not talking about paying for half-day kindergarten. I'm talking about the ones who want a full-day kindergarten. Are you willing to pay for that extra services? Because a lot of it involves, quote-unquote, purposeful play. Like, is purposeful play, do we need a $150,000 teacher to do purposeful play where maybe there's a different option? But my thing is, if you have 600 kids or 500 kids who are willing to pay for the service, at least it would mitigate some of the costs. Now, like I said, I don't know whether or not it's even allowable by the state of Pennsylvania, but
And real quick before we move on to that, I just want to address the purposeful play piece. We spent a little more time talking about that tonight for a couple of reasons. First, because Dr. Murphy had that embedded in his research, so I wanted to make sure that was addressed. Second part is that's not something that we formally do district-wide in every kindergarten classroom, and it would be something that would be new and what we believe would be a benefit to the program. But again, I do want to go back to what Ms. Gary spoke about with the benefits from a curriculum standpoint and the social and the developmental and the language piece, all those other reasons that I don't want to make it sound like it's all about purposeful play to move to full day kindergarten. We highlighted that tonight for the reasons I just shared, but just wanted to point that out.
As far as we're a public school, if we offer it to we don't have to offer the program, but if we do offer it, we cannot charge for anything, any part of that program. So that's the law, the state law.
Oh, there was Ms. Paulin and Ms. Stone, and then we can go back around.
So I just want to say that for me, the children who are now in half-day kindergarten, they are our children. The children who are in private kindergartens, they are our children that will come to Council Rock in first grade. And the parents that have sent their kids to half-day Council Rock's kindergarten, and then the other half-day in Champions or like other like private local programs, these are our children, these are the parents that pay way much more than they should. And I do know a lot of cases of people who send their kids to private kindergartens and they never came to Council Rock. So it's, the number of these people is much higher than what it shows there. And I'm sure we can ask people, but I do know parents that they went through that experience. So with regard to the research, I understand a lot of it is like pretty old, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so that older research, did they have structure or like purposeful play back then, or it's more of a new thing that has been introduced?
that was one of the bullet points that I had talked about on the social emotional slide, social development slide. So a lot of the older research doesn't necessarily address that, or doesn't discuss it nearly to the same extent that the more recent studies do.
Right.
And some of the more recent studies seem to talk about that being a reason or the prior lack of focus on purposeful play or structured play, whatever we would want to call that, is purported as one of the reasons, one of the potential reasons for that.
Okay, and so assuming that 20-year-old research holds, you said that it takes about 3 years for kids to catch up. And so I think if we do that, we create an unnecessary burden for our children to spend like 3 years to catch up. And to me, catching up is not educational excellence. And we do want educational excellence in Council Rock. And so if someone spends 3 years catching up, how is it gonna help with like falling test scores? Because again, we want to achieve excellence. We want the best for our students, both from educational, the content, but also become global citizens and learners and be able to function well in teams later in school, later in life when they go out. And we have research, and I don't know if we're going to talk about Professor Grant's research about how the early education affects someone's life throughout in both educationally and also success. And let's not forget the parents of these kids who, if they have a 2.5-hour kindergarten, they have to deal with their work schedule. Maybe they have to stay home, because who can find a job for a 2.5-hour like kindergarten? Or they have to come up with the money and pay for like the private or the additional programs. So I mean, to me, and thank you so much for like all the work you did, and I have many more questions about the experience from other districts, and I can come back and ask this, because I know other people want to ask, but it's very clear, the benefit to me is very clear of what the full day kindergarten nowadays, with the appropriate program, can offer, because we do want excellence. We don't wanna say, okay, it's an okay program, then we catch up after 3 years, it's fine. No, we want excellence now. And
So if I may, Ms. Polly, you asked about Adam Grant's, one of his latest books, Hidden Treasure, Hidden Potential. We have taken that book, and our cabinet team has had that. We included Ryan Murphy in that. And we were reading through and looking at the research that that's embedded in his work. And we can give some highlights right now of that book. Anthony, if I could pick on you on the spot.
Yeah, so they did mention in Adam Grant's book that, although the academic skills plateaued or leveled out at 3rd grade, they said what it really needs to be the learner is what we should look at. So they noticed that they surveyed teachers of 4th graders and teachers of 8th graders, and they had a survey of what really makes a good learner, and that's somebody who's being in the classroom, being pro-social, being able to read themselves, advocate for themselves. And they said those students who came from a strong kindergarten background had those skills to be good learners. Multiple times throughout the book, I know and I appreciate curriculum instruction and academia, but I also believe in relationships, and I believe in critical thinking and those skills as well. And they said that in that book, really it's about critical thinking, it's about those skills that really aren't measured in the PSSA that makes people successful in life. And a few times that's what I got out of some of those readings in that book.
Thanks for repeating our conversation.
Thank you. I think Ms. Stone, you were next.
Yeah, I just would, the same thing, to reiterate that, by the way, that some of the studies do show that test scores still remain higher in 5th and 7th grade if they've gone to full kindergarten. So on average, they level out, but it doesn't mean that there aren't some students that benefit long range on test scores in math and reading. And one of the other things that as you say, we have a great Champions program here. And I find that there's a case where some parents are able to take advantage of what could be considered a full day kindergarten program by participating in Champions, but it's only offered at a couple of our elementary schools. So I find it's unfair to the general community that their kids can't participate in this program, which is a great program. And I think a full day kindergarten then would provide that same benefit that we're already providing to some families, and that would be provided then to all families in a fair manner. One of the other things we talked about was the probability of Pennsylvania making full day kindergarten mandatory. So we should be thinking about that possibility. The other things that I had read was, we talk about transitions. A full day kindergarten program makes the transition to 1st grade much easier for those kids, because now they've already been full day. I know personally, myself growing up, I went to kindergarten, there was no such thing as preschool. You didn't have that advantage of socializing. And I remember myself going into kindergarten and wondering how come all these other kids know so much and I don't. I mean, I really felt like I didn't belong there in that kindergarten. And it did take me a long time to build my self-confidence and so on, because I didn't have any preparatory skills to walk into kindergarten or first grade. And I know it took a long time for me to get that back, so I don't think it's, you're saying, all right, the skills are back when they hit third grade. I think there's a lot of kids that are suffering between kindergarten until they get up to par with everyone else in their self-confidence and those learning skills that are harder. I also think that, as Yoda was mentioning, the stress on families who need to have two working parents, that stress, trying to figure out who is, and whether they need to work or they want to work. I find it, as a woman and then as a single parent, that I had to manipulate my schedule and life in order to get up at 4 in the morning to be able to get my kids into certain camp programs, and then figure out daycare, pre-kindergarten, post-kindergarten, preschool, all those typical things that maybe it might be easier for a family, but as a single parent, it was extremely stressful. And you bring that stress into the family, and that definitely affects the child's learning. Because now he's in a family that doesn't have all that time with them. So that additional family stress relates to stress for the child as well. So I think that there's no doubt in my mind that full-day kindergarten has advantages for the child, for the parents, for the community and long-term, as Adam Grant even is looking at, developing, helping them to develop learning skills. And by the way, Adam Grant is a professor at Wharton School, and was he an organizational psychologist? Yeah, so, and been doing this for years and years. I think that's it.
Sorry, thank you. Ms. Osaki?
Yeah, just a couple things to add. I think Yoda summarized a lot of things that I was going to say very, very well. So, I did want to kind of respond to Mr. Hickey and agree with you on one point and disagree with you on another point. I also, these are all of any kid who lives in Council Rock, any family who lives in Council Rock, they're our constituents and that's our community and we have to respect them. And we have to evaluate where they're coming from, even if they don't attend our schools. A lot of kids, like Yoda mentioned, their families may say, okay, I need full-day kindergarten, so I'm gonna look at Newtown Friends or St. Andrews or Penryn or whatever these other programs are. And then they say, oh, this was a great experience. I was gonna send my kid to Council Rock, but they really like it here, so we're gonna stay. So those numbers may be, are even higher if we were to offer a full-day program, and that might be reflected in, not just in our kindergarten, but all throughout the Council Rock education system. But then I really do agree with you about Wrightstown in particular. We have to look at the facilities, and I'm looking forward to hearing more about your ideas. I'm waiting for you to have a genius idea about how we're going to accommodate these students, because it is a challenge. And then, to Linda's point, I wish that we lived in a world where we had like this little nuclear family and, grandparents who just were, around the corner and wanted to help take care of kids during the day, and pick up the kids. And actually, when I pick up my kindergarten, I see some awesome grandparents standing outside, waiting for their kids to come out of kindergarten. But that's not the world we live in, and we have to plan for our community and the world that we do live in. All that being said, I did actually have some questions for Mrs. Crawford or Mr. Devlin about how a full-day kindergarten program could potentially, if it would, help identify kids who do have learning disabilities or other special needs, and then accommodate them in kindergarten. If we had a full-day program, could they be identified and helped in our kindergarten program
and beyond?
Sure, well, thank you for the question. I have worked in a full-day kindergarten model, and I've had the opportunity to help many students in special education, both academically and socially. So we do get, in a full-day model, we have our eyes on the student for a greater time. Conversely, we don't have our eyes on the student for the full day, and that's when we find things. So I've been able to help a lot of families because we didn't have eyes on them when they were in school because of compulsory laws and so forth. Second to that, though, when students aren't responding to the general education curriculum at a rate with their peers, then we could start possibly the MTSS model quicker. Parents can make requests for evaluation quicker, so that we can put interventions in place quicker, either through the MTS model, close that gap, so we prevent students from becoming eligible. One of the things we can do under Tammy's guidance with the curriculum, the change of the curriculum, providing that full menu of the horizons and the wonders with phonemic awareness is something that I would be excited about and would very much look forward to if that were to be the decision for the board.
Yeah, Ms. Stone?
It was interesting, we all went to Central Bucks, right, and listened to their program. Because they're not just doing, or they're considering not just adding a full day kindergarten, but regrading, so moving 6th grade to middle school when they were here. But they did a really nice job of projecting the cost to the taxpayer. And they were, tell me if I'm wrong, but they were looking at an increase depending on whether they did it immediately or if they waited an extra year. They were looking at maybe $500 a year on average, not a year, over the 5-year period, $500 per homeowner. Was that?
I'd have to look back, I don't want to speak to that. I have the slides and actually Dr. Sanko and I will be sharing them with Mr. Rapp.
Yeah.
Because I agree how they laid out, particularly for the kindergarten, full day kindergarten. It was very clear in terms of costs and it was broken down in a format that was easy to understand. But
And
I do know that they talked about planning this work over 2 budget cycles.
correct.
Planning, working around that from a time frame standpoint, which seems like a good idea, but again, we're at the beginning stages of having these discussions. But do you remember the exact number?
No, I just looked at the pictures I took of their slides last night, and I don't have that exact slide. But they did break it out, and as Nicole said earlier, Tony will be able to talk about some numbers on Council Rock during the March Finance meeting. And primarily around the number or the range that we projected tonight, about 16 regular ed teachers. As Nicole said, there's a lot of work to do, things that we have to, if we're gonna continue with this, questions we have to answer, like do we maintain 2 specials at the kindergarten level, or do the kindergarten students receive all 5 specials like students in grades 1 through 6? And, or special ed costs, teacher assistant costs, additional psychologist costs, to Anthony's point of, our child find responsibilities. So we'll start narrowing in on that beginning in the finance meeting in March, looking at some of these numbers based on, once again, at the risk of being repetitive, but we found our best way to forecast, given the numbers we have, are the first grade numbers, because the kindergarten numbers, they're all over the board. So if we look at our first grade enrollment, and that's what Tony will work off of for the March meeting.
Thank you. Are there any other questions? I also have a couple of questions or comments. Well, thank you for the presentation, and I think the discussion amongst the board members was great as well. I know in the later elementary grades, there are required minutes of instructional time, whether it's literacy and math. So currently in kindergarten, do we know, Crawford, what the requirement versus what the students in half-day kindergarten program receives in ELA?
Right now, we've looked, Ms. Gary and I have looked at several schedules across different schools, and there are some slight inconsistencies, so we purposely did not include minutes with those blocks of time. I can certainly provide that next month, but again, there are some, because there are teachers that maybe break it into 2 blocks for, one reason or another, and so we can certainly provide minutes with the half-day schedule and how that's broken up currently, but there are some nuances to it again across the 10 elementary schools. So we would be looking at realigning all of that if we had full-day kindergarten here. So we would be taking a look, working with the kindergarten teachers, the specialists, the teams at building a developmentally appropriate schedule and looking at the minutes and such. I don't know if you have something else to add, but we just started that work too.
Okay, great. So what about first grade, though? We know the general number of minutes that are required by PDE for first grade and ELA. Do we know what those are?
I can look that up off the top of my head. I just don't want to misquote.
Right,
So
right.
we have all that information.
Okay, thank you, I appreciate it. I think, as a parent, and I've stated this in the past with a kindergartner, all parents, and even the community members in Council Rock or any community, I think we want the best for all children in our district, in our area, and have that every opportunity to become lifelong learners. And the earliest stages that we can offer in our district in public school is kindergarten. I think, we're talking about my question with literacy. We have 2 brand new programs, and we keep saying, wait till this, we have time to facilitate this and give students and staff and teachers the opportunity to really implement it with fidelity. So right now in kindergarten, we can't fully implement even one of those programs. It's being severely modified, which is the question that I asked of Ms. Crawford about how much actual English language reading time that students in kindergarten receive. I know for one, I was a PM kindergarten parent, but I had actually requested an AM kindergarten time slot because starting school at 1 o'clock was not conducive to my child that was awake at 5:30, 6 o'clock every morning. In terms of having this full day experience, it gives them the opportunity for these kindergartners to not even become a learner and a good learner and a student in all the ways, right? Whether it's academic, it's social, and then also the experience and the love of learning. So currently in kindergartners, our students don't get to participate in recess. I mean, they get a brief one, but I know in the at least first grade through 3rd grade, they go to recess twice, a couple breaks throughout the day. Kindergartners don't get to participate in lunch. They don't get to participate in the specials, which I was disappointed as a kindergarten parent, other than library and music, which are great specials, but we have STEAM now. I've heard from kindergarten teachers that have asked for products and resources so they can implement STEAM at the kindergarten level, which they fully can, including coding, which is super cute to see, and kids love it. I love the idea of purposeful play. There is a time and place, and there is a whole body of research that talks about that and all the benefits from that. Creating these lifelong learners, there's definite, I know Dr. Murphy, you and I talked a little bit about some of the research, and I kind of went back into the reference pages and pulled out like the most recent ones. And we talked about the skills that they're learning in literacy at an early age, beginning with full day kindergarten. And although we talk about the fade out, or we talk about how academically things may level out by 3rd grade, there is significant data and research that also shows that those skills that they acquire, both academic and social and beyond, or cognitive abilities, that leads to further subsequent education and skills in life and success in life. So I think at this point, I for one am a big supporter to continue the exploration and work to see where this takes us. I think at this point, the administration is looking for continued agreement or head nods to continue the work. So I know Ms. Crawford talked about presenting at the March meeting a timeline, and then meeting also with finance and seeing, what this means financially for all of our taxpayers and constituents, because that is an important key element, and I know that we're going to do the best possible way to make sure that every dollar counts, and that, we're going to do this purposefully, authentically, and make sure that we're doing it right, so all of our students in Council Rock have the opportunity to succeed. Any objections? Do we need to, I don't see anyone shaking their head no, to allow administration to continue the work? Mr. Tate, and then it was Mr. Rosen.
I support continuing the research that's ongoing and hearing presentations in March at both Education Committee and Finance Committee. And then at that point, we'll talk about it again.
Right, thank you. Mr. Roosevelt?
Thank you. I'm glad that this conversation included educational excellence and ranking and talking about lifelong learners. I'm going to put you guys on the spot for a minute because we do know that one of the ways that the state evaluates this is through the Keystones and the PSSAs. Those 23 numbers have been out for a while. And I guess it'll be a little bit easy because you guys, Council Rock kind of stays in the same area through all of these evaluations year to year to year to year. Would it be fair to say that Council Rock, as a district, ranks in the top 15% of these educational metrics and analysis? Or could you be more specific as far as where we're at?
I don't know whether we're in the top 15%. I think, the presentation that I gave in the fall regarding PSSA and Keystone scores, the Keystone scores especially, was very difficult. It's a subject area test as compared to a grade level test. And during COVID, you had students who may have taken algebra in 9th grade, they may have missed their algebra in 8th grade. So the scores themselves over the last couple of years, I don't know if they're completely representative, but I would say in general, if you're talking about a 75% advanced proficient range for a lot of our students, I mean, that's been fairly consistent. And I would say when we do rankings across we have 13 school districts in Bucks County, and so if you look at the number of high schools, I think we have 26 middle schools. There are some years where we are within the top 5 of those 26 middle schools. There are other years when we're not. Same thing is true with the high schools. Council Rock North and South, it varies from year to year, but consistently those scores are up there.
And what about PSSAs for elementary bracket?
I would say that we've been consistent as well. We are continuing to look at that data and seeing how it can inform the work that we're doing. But we do believe, again, going back to just the work that we're looking into now, the early intervention rather, that you're supporting students, we do believe that we'll see those benefits later on in the grades. And again, kind of going back to what I said earlier, we're not looking in respect to full day kindergarten to recreate first grade in kindergarten, but rather provide them with the foundation to be even more ready for first grade. And I do think we see the benefits as you get into those other grades, the testing grades as well.
Right. Because I remember the past couple of years, around this time, we were talking about these scores and these rankings. And I think that in this conversation particularly, especially as we're talking about the trajectory benefit to the student, this would be an ample time to dive into these numbers. And they're very intricate, they're complicated. It almost seems like maybe something that Dr. Barnes could help us out with. He was tremendously instrumental last year in helping us analyze and look at the difference between Holland Middle and Newtown Middle of about 13% difference specifically to math. We also looked at through there, he revealed, we looked at all the math scores over, in different cohorts for elementary school, and we saw a similar drop-off in third grade and then another drop-off in 6th grade, specifically to math. So having this type of tangible evidence, this quantitative element of analysis, I think is really important to look at. Because after all, this is what we're talking about. This is an investment. We're making an investment into our district for educational excellence. I'm pretty comfortable saying that everybody around this table wants the best for our kids and wants educational excellence. The question really is, how do we do it, and what's the best way to do it? So I think that this has provided a good element to getting closer to that. We've talked about potential benefits. It would be nice to have more of a quantitative element to that and look at these scores and compare them to other districts. But generally speaking, there's a lot of rankings that come out every year, and it roughly puts Council Rock School District, specifically high school, north somewhere close to the top 50, and south is in that same mix of roughly top 50, and north tends to be, I don't know, 15, 20 points or something higher, and sometimes both are in the top 50, sometimes one's in, one's out. I think the most recent ranking might have had north in top 40 and maybe south close to top 50 or just in. So that's a similar disparity to look at that we were analyzing at the middle school level. What is that attributed to? And what would be really great is, does full-day kindergarten help to address some of this? That's what we're talking about, right? The trajectory of the student. So having an idea of cost, which I believe is coming up at the next finance committee meeting, and all these districts are different. We all have different challenges. So, looking at what Central Bucks is doing, it's not really apples to apples. If they did it there, that doesn't necessarily prescribe how Council Rock would do it. So I think that that's important to analyze. There's a big element here as far as buildings. There's a big element here regarding payroll and space and the dollars. So that goes to the dollars. So having some of this analysis of what it could do is great, the benefits that it could provide to our students and to our community, whether it's temporary or whether it's more long, remains to be seen, I think, in the quantitative data, and that's great. But we also look at the cost. And then we have an interesting element. We can evaluate this as an investment into the district, which I think is what's exciting all of us around this table to do. And that, I'm looking forward to seeing that. So I don't necessarily think that full-day kindergarten has been completely evaluated. I believe Mr. Rapp might have some numbers already, but they're not ready to be released until the next finance committee meeting. So I think it's important to play this all out and to begin to look at this as an investment. It's not there yet. So I support continuing to look at this data, but we all insert an implicit bias into our decision making. I have learned over time that it's very important in decision making to do my best to not insert that and to evaluate everything before you start positioning for something or against something. And that's why I was excited at one of the earlier meetings, we talked about the flow chart. I think that's gonna come in at some point. So, and I think this is an exciting time for Council Rock, and I look forward to figuring out what's the best way to help get all of our students to be exceptional lifelong learners and educational excellence.
So I think to your point of, evaluating, something this large will touch everyone in the district. So obviously you're hearing things tonight at the Education Committee meeting. We said several times that we'll hear numbers and try to drill down on numbers at the finance meeting. Nicole shared some fluid numbers up there with the about 208 students per year, but space is an issue, so you also hear information as it relates to full-day kindergarten at a facilities meeting too. So because it's bigger than just one spoke of the wheel. So we're trying to look at it, and with your head nods telling us to continue to do the work, we're happy to do that, but we know it touches everyone in the district.
And this is just the first step, essentially. the opening the discussion last meeting and today was just about providing a deeper dive into it, but those are great points to bring up that everyone's brought up tonight, that there are a lot more pieces to this that will involve a lot more people on our team. And Ms. Khan, I do want to let you know, I have all the schedules here for kindergarten. It's approximately 40 minutes of ELA a day. I knew I had that at my fingertips, I just didn't want to misspeak.
Okay.
And that can vary, again, depending on what's happening, and in a particular classroom, it could be a little bit more too. But generally speaking, 40 minutes a day.
Thank you, I appreciate that. I mean, I think there was no decision that was being made tonight other than to just continue the work. That the administration, and this is gonna be a process, right? It's not one meeting, 2 meetings. We have kind of a, as we move along, we get a better idea and all the moving parts, as Dr. St. stated, that it's gonna touch every arm of our district. So I think you can pretty much say that the administration can continue their work. And as we move through this thoughtful, educated, well-informed process, and I look forward to our next meeting. And with that, I think we'll move on back to our agenda. Ms. Crawford? Okay. Oh, sorry. Mr. Devlin.
Thank you.
Well, I'll just pass it.
Yes, so I'm just here tonight to present the guidance plan. The guidance plan is just, it's already been approved, it was approved in 2022, and as you know, we just passed the comprehensive plan last year. So with the comprehensive plan, the state had changed the timeline to everything. So we just need to resubmit the guidance plan so that it falls into the cycle of the comprehensive plan. There are no changes to the plan whatsoever other than the date. Currently, the guidance plan is posted on our website under special services, but now what we're going to do is we're going to attach it under the comprehensive plan page so that everybody can have access to that plan so they can see what it is.
Questions and comments regarding the guidance plan?
Does that mean going
Mr.
forward?
So what does that mean? So it's just it's a formality, the state had changed the cycle. Everything now is under the Future Ready Comprehensive Plan portal in the MyPDE Suite app, which is for the Pennsylvania Department of Education. Everything lives in on that website. So now this plan is a part of that website and it's under the comprehensive plan. I know it sounds silly, but that's what it is. This is the guidance plan, which is composed of just what we're doing in terms of the college and career readiness, what students need to graduate and so forth. But there's no change in the plan other than that it's being added to the comprehensive plan cycle.
About 15 years ago, the state started requiring districts to submit their plans electronically. They moved to a website, and they started with one of the IUs building the website. It was less than user-friendly to use. Over the years, they've been collapsing everything into the MyPDE Suite, which is what they call their suite of applications. There are about 7,000 plans and documents the school districts are required to submit every year. What they've been doing is consolidating, and every year they add a couple more plans to this. What they're trying to do is to have one central location that you can go to find all the documentation that dictates what the plans are doing, the comprehensive plan, all those schedules. They're trying to bring everything together, make it easier for both the lay user, eventually they'll open this up so that any parent, any citizen can get in and look at any of the plans that are published. Parts of it are already available. And then it's for districts to use to help track what they're doing and input their progress. And then it's for the decision makers, I was going to say politicians, but that's not appropriate, the decision makers to be able to take the data and collect it and do statewide reporting. Because it's very difficult to take this when you're all doing something different. I mean, 15 years ago when we did a comprehensive plan, our plan did not look like any other plan in the district, in the county or the state. But now all of the plans look and feel about the same. So if you're familiar with the plan, you know exactly where to go to. So this is just another to consolidate that, and I think as time goes on, there's going to be more and more and more.
But for now, for the public, on our opening page under our district, you'll see 2023 to 2026 comprehensive plan documents, which include professional development plan, comprehensive plan, the full document, an overview of it, which is short, like an abbreviated version, gifted assurances, and the 2022 guidance plan, and then it says coming soon, 24 to 27.
Correct,
So it's not, what Anthony's discussing is not there, not posted yet.
it is not posted yet. So again, this was previously approved in 2022. The document was from 2022 to 2025. So the current plan is still in effect, but we're straddling this new implementation of the FRCPP plan that is melded to the comprehensive plan. And we need to have that updated.
So I think I can speak a little bit to this because I had the same questions and confusion when I was meeting. I think it's kind of when Dr. Sanko and Cabinet talked about how the district in Council Rock has moved over to this Linkit system, right? A centralized location to house all the documents, and it's accessible and everyone's able to kind of see it the same way. I believe this is the same thing in terms of the Pennsylvania Department of Education. Again, where they're kind of transferring information, and it happens to kind of, as Mr. Devlin had said, straddle too. So like, it's almost a resubmitting under the guidance plan because we have to meet different phase and timelines and deadlines. So I know like, in regards to the comprehensive plan, which is the guidance plan falls under, when I looked at the information on our website and also PDE, there's 3 separate phase systems where they have to submit different components of the comprehensive plan. And I know some of those dates kind of overlap and change. So it's just, I guess, Mr. Devlin, to clarify, it's just submitting something because we have to submit it again that's already been submitted.
Correct.
For this new changeover of system.
We're resubmitting the plan into the new application because the application had changed with the comprehensive plan.
So it's a requirement from the state. Okay. So then I think Ms. Polly had a question.
So that helped me understand more of what we're doing, but you said that this was approved in 22.
Correct.
And we're gonna re-evaluate in 24?
Well, we will, it's a good question. So we're resubmitting it, and we will follow now the timeline, the comprehensive plan. So this will be 24 through 26 or 27, or what's
So
that?
the current comprehensive plan is in effect from July 1, 2023 till June 30, 2026. So give or take, because PDE gives you time to work on it, in the fall of 2026, going into the 2027 school year, that's when the new comprehensive, whatever we change, would take effect. And so the plan that Anthony's speaking about tonight will be incorporated, and the entire package will be updated to be 2027, 2030. Right? Yes, it's a 3-year cycle. Every 3 years, everything
You're
gets.
saying that this will stay as is until 2026?
Correct.
What if we want to change?
There is a process by which you can open up your document. You have to go through PDE to do it, but you can change it.
I mean, if this was approved in 22, in order to resubmit it and have it until the end of 26, it would make sense to like just review it, see if we.
We can definitely, so.
There's so much information.
There is information, so just so you know, the state is constantly changing certain things, and I'll leave out there, there is some reviews that the state is doing. So for instance, the college and career readiness. So they're looking at a bunch of different standards, and there may be new standards coming down the pike in the next year or two. If new standards come about or things change in terms of graduation requirements that the state's putting together, then we will have to open up the plan to make those changes and review it.
Okay, so everything that is listed here as the per grade and curriculum and the
Third
program,
grade, fifth grade, eighth grade.
these things all happen right now?
Correct, they do, and we check them off, and we collect that data, we have artifacts and so forth, yes.
I mean, that's impressive because there's a lot going on in these schedules. So, I just wonder if we can have a little bit more time to review if you are to submit for like the next.
So there is, so we can review it, I can go over it greater, I know that Tammy and I have been looking at it as well.
Okay.
But this needs to be up to the state by March 30th. 31st, so it's a so again, they didn't give us too much, they sprung this on us after the comprehensive plan was completed. They said, oh, by the way, your guidance plan needs to fit now on this timeline. We said, well, we just submitted the guidance plan. So, well, we're just converting everything over to this website. So the state has sprung this change on us, so we need to upload it. But we can review it. It talks about what the college and career path is for readiness, starting at, really starting at kindergarten. We look at career and employability skills and interests, whether it's post-secondary education or employability. Pretty much, for any of you who have worked in special education, our transition. So now, if you want to think about the transition skills in special education, pretty much we have that in general education now, to make sure students have a good idea of what their interests are and what they would want to do in their life after they graduate high school.
But that's not only special ed.
No, this is everybody. This is everybody. Pretty comprehensive.
So you want the board to approve this in the next?
I'm just informing the board that this will be posted, uploaded to the new website that PDE is asking us to upload it to.
So if I may,
Yes.
this has already been board approved. There has been a change in practice and a directive from PDE. We want to let you know that instead of two separate documents living out there, we want to inform you and the community that PDE has said to us, this has been approved, but now it has to be underneath the same umbrella and part of the comprehensive plan. Does that make sense?
No, I understand that part. What I don't understand is that if PD receives that, do they assume that it's going to stay the same until 2020?
It's already in the window that it's been approved, so we're within that 3-year window with it.
I understand,
So this
but
is-
what I'm saying is if there is a need for a change, if we review and we decide that, there's something that maybe we want to change, can we still do it after it's approved?
Yes, we can always change it. We can always add to it, yeah.
Andrea mentioned, there's a process we can go in through PDE and reopen the plan. Yes.
And as PDE continues to change what they're looking for in college and career readiness, and if they were to issue us an edict, we would have to change to meet their edict. So
And
yes.
that's why it's such a short cycle, it's only 3 years. So in 3 years, the comprehensive plan that we have right now, which is answering PDE's expectation that we provide evidence, they could be completely different. So that's what kind of drives the direction that the comprehensive plan goes in. They kind of tell us where to take our plan.
Is there something that you want to change?
No, I mean, there's just so much information here that when I start looking at it, I don't know if you had a chance to look at it, there's like so many slides, so many schedules, so I would like to have some time to review it. I mean, if you have to submit it, then submit it. But I would like if the whole board was to review it, or if I can come and we can sit down and
We reviewed it a couple years, we just reviewed it.
It's good through 4, 5, and 6.
we're just changing the place where it's at. So if you want to review it because of a specific thing, then go ahead and let's look at the spot you want to review.
Right.
But I don't think anybody came with other recommendations to review or change it. It's more of a mandate from the state telling us we have to do it and put it part of our comprehensive plan. It wasn't even asking us to approve it. It's just informing us that the place where it's going to be is now part of the comprehensive plan.
Right,
And you can always-
I understand that part very well, I don't need further explanation. But what I'm saying is, because this is a very detailed and specific plan, and very impressive, I must say, I do not know it. I need to understand it better.
But didn't we do that before when we talked about it?
But I guess at that time, we didn't spend a lot of time reviewing
You approved
it, from my perspective. So I would like to understand it better. If you guys are okay with it, that's fine, but I need to educate myself more about that.
I just want to interject here and say, I think in terms of anyone, we're able to review it and we've already gotten clarification that if changes or modifications need to be done, then that can still happen. So, okay. And for the purpose of this dialogue conversation, it just really helps for those at home, if we can just not have a table conversation, but if we can wait to be called upon, it just makes it less confusing at home for those that are reviewing. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, I am circulating a 24-25 district calendar, and this has already been board approved. So this was the 24-25 calendar next year. Because remember last education committee meeting, we talked about the 25-26 calendar, not to confuse you. Well, I will say, I'm going to preface my comments about the district calendar. My predecessor, Mr. Barry Desco, who I viewed as a mentor, he said, Al, that district calendar looks like it's, kind of benign, innocuous. It comes up and bites you. And he was correct. So for next year, you have already approved, the board's approved on March 16th of 2023, this calendar, which I have on one side, the board approved. However, tonight, I come before you with some proposed amendments to this calendar for next year. Because there's some things that I guess you could view as oversights, and I'll take responsibility for this, even though I looked at the calendar 42 times. But there's been a lot of emphasis about when we start school before Labor Day or after Labor Day. We've talked a lot about a 3-day versus a 5-day spring break. We've talked about some of the issues with going to school later in June. But a couple of the areas that were overlooked that I put before you for consideration, and if you think they are worthy of making those changes, this is something that would need board action at a future board meeting, probably in April. That's typically when we vote on the calendars for the years. So the two dates I want to bring to your attention. The first one is Friday, October 11th, 2024. So that evening, sunset, is religious observance of Yom Kippur. So Yom Kippur does not start until 6:25 p.m. So right now, we have that as a day off. I consulted with several rabbis, congregations within the district, as well as other families, and just to confirm that the religious observance is really not in effect until Friday evening. So that could possibly be a day on rather than a day off without causing any ill will or anything of the sort. So that would possibly be one consideration in terms of making an amendment to the 24-25 calendar. The second date that I just wish to bring to the board's attention is surrounding the winter holidays, and that is the Monday, December 23rd, 2024. So right after that Monday, we would then go on our winter break, an extended period of time, and return to school after New Year's on Thursday, January 2nd. We are concerned that that Monday is kind of a dangling day and that perhaps we would have lower attendance rates on that Monday. The other peripheral issue, I think, is, even in terms of our energy conservation program that we institute typically around the winter time, if we did have that as a day off, then we would be able to institute those energy conservation practices the Friday prior. How much that equates to in actual dollars was hard for me to say. I actually asked Jess from facilities. It's hard to quantify that, but there will be a cost savings there. So that's the considerations in terms of amendments that I come before the board this evening. The October 11th date and then the December 23rd date.
Questions and comments, Mr. Tate?
So, great, seems straightforward. So we restored October 11 as a school day, and we swapped December 23rd for January 1st. Second, I'm nitpicking here.
Yeah.
I'll hit you for this.
Yeah.
It says recommended changes on top of the pages 124, 24.
That's just when we adjusted the draft internally.
All right, no big deal. All right.
That won't be part of the board action if it's.
Yeah, so it's just those two little changes.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yeah, I think there was another slight change with the 90th day. That's more of an internal mechanism for us. Sometimes we have LTSs that are only teaching for a semester, and in terms of human resources and payroll, we want to make sure we have that 90th day correct. So there's a slight adjustment to that. One more adjustment. I did miss this. So on the calendar that was approved, with the 11th initially being an approved day off, we had the day prior to that, October 10th, as a K-8 early dismissal. My suggestion would be, if the consideration is to put the 11th back as a day on, to move that half day to Friday, October 11th. So that would be an additional switch, but it's a related switch if you will.
Sure. Thank you.
And Mr. Tate?
Yeah, it sounds pretty straightforward. My only question or whatever would have to do with the extracurriculars after school, to make sure that even though the 11th is now a school day, that we are not going to interfere with any of this, because of the services, that all after-school stuff would still be canceled or.
Extremely sensitive to that, and I talked to our athletic directors. I believe the football game that typically is on a Friday night is going to be on the Thursday night. Absolutely. Yeah, we would not have those extracurricular activities.
Okay, yeah, I just wanted, thanks.
Also to clarify, I know that when Mr. Funk and I were having this discussion, that historically, we've never had that full day of Yom Kippur off anyways, because the holiday wasn't observed until in the evening, correct?
That is correct.
Okay.
That is correct.
Sunset.
Sunset, yes, exactly. So you're looking for April approval at the board meeting?
Yes.
Can we move this forward as a consent agenda item, or are there any objections to this? I think it's pretty self-explanatory as well.
We could do March.
We can do more.
We could do March.
Did you, okay, so March, I don't see why we couldn't do March either. And it gives obviously the public more time and notice, so I think March would be great. Thank you, Ms. Hidalgo, for that suggestion. Mrs. Osaki?
Just before we move on, we did get an email, I think all the board members got an email about the Lunar New Year. And I know this is this year, and we've already approved it.
Yeah.
And I just don't want to let that go without, let's consider that for the next time we do a calendar.
So I received that email too. I brought it to the attention of the cabinet, and that, just like every other request we've had, we will sit down and look at it when we're building the calendar. Just one thing I'll point out. The latest holiday we've added to our calendar was Eid. And because we approved calendars 2 years in advance, sometimes we can't do it in the immediacy. So I just want to point that out to the board and the community. But the Lunar New Year, not only was it shared, the request with cabinet, I responded to the parent directly.
Mr. Roosevelt?
I have an observation here. I noticed on the previous one, talking about the blue squares, but there are 9. And on the new one, there's 10. So it looks like we've added a student staff day off for developmental conferences, bringing us to a total of 10 during the school year. Wow.
So I believe in the June 18th should have been in the board approved the blue. There you go. Extra 10.
On the other
The
one.
day after the last day of school.
Right.
Is a staff.
Is a staff day.
Yep.
Okay, so that's the 10.
There you go.
There we go. Yeah, and I mean, another comment, just to reiterate, and we see this as a school district almost every year. There's parents that want to take their kids for either a college tour, or maybe it's a religious day, or maybe it's something important to their family, who knows what. They take them out of school. Before we had a full week of spring break, they'd take 2 or 3 days and then take another 3 and just keep their kids out of school. So that remains an option throughout all of this. And you guys are trying to get how many instructional days?
So it's 180 instructional days, 900 hours at the elementary, 990 at the secondary. There is that new Act 56 that gives you that end-or flexibility.
Right.
But it's still tight.
So, and effectively, you're between a rock and a hard place on wanting to start and wanting to end, and you can't get it all. So, I think you guys have done a pretty good job with this. Thank you.
So this will be obviously after board approval at the March meeting, it will be communicated in all the ways since this is next year's change.
It'll be this calendar is already reflected on our website. Once the board approves it, that change will take place on our district website, and we'll advertise like we always do. Okay, and then just for your edification in the public, as Al mentioned, the 25-26 calendar was presented to you last month. We'll be talking to you about that again and looking at an April approval on that. So I too like the suggestion of doing this one in March because we keep them separate for our community. Because it does get confusing with the 2 years in advance approvals.
Thank you.
Good.
Yeah. I don't know if anything else. So a little bit about Sloan School. Sloan School, as you know, is currently housed at Star Center, and currently serves the need of 40 high school students. That number is a bit fluid because students do transition in and out of Sloan School. We try to make sure that if they are transitioning, they do so at a natural break point, whether that's a marking period, a semester, beginning of school, end of the school year. We currently have four teachers at the Sloan School. We have a full-time counselor, we have a teacher assistant, and it serves both the needs of our regular education students and our special education students. So our professional staff are certificated in multiple areas at the Sloan School. The Sloan School had its origin way back in 1995, and it started at what was just the original Council Rock High School. And there was one teacher, and they were under the guidance of then Assistant Principal, Mr. Theodore Sloan, so hence the name Sloan School. The Sloan School has occupied many different venues over the past few decades. So it started at Council Rock High School, then they went to Frost Lane, which is adjacent to Goodnoe for a period of time, currently known as the Sale House. They were at Chandler Hall. They were at Welsh Elementary. Today incorporated, the LSAT building up here on Penn Street, and now our wonderful location at the Star Center. So it's been a lot of different places. They do have a referral process in place for students. So Mr. Kalachi, who's the lead teacher over at the Sloan School, he attends the child study team meetings at both of the high schools, kind of a multidisciplinary team meeting. So students that are struggling, students that are experiencing obstacles to their learning, and of course we talked about this many times, the obstacles can take many forms. which I don't necessarily have to get into, but those children would be discussed at a child study team meeting. And if the team determines that they could benefit from a smaller, more structured setting, and I would say it probably has more of a therapeutic milieu to it, because sometimes, our high schools are large. If you're talking about 2,000 students at Council Rock High School South, and you're talking about 1,650 at Council Rock North, they're large public comprehensive high schools, which can be a bit overwhelming for some students. So the smaller, more structured setting is certainly sometimes beneficial for students. So they would go through that referral process. Certainly the family is very involved in that process. And then we replicate the curriculum of the high schools at the Sloan School. So they're following the same curriculum. Now, I will have a caveat. We are limited in that we wouldn't necessarily be able to implement science labs. Sometimes certain elective courses or world languages can be a challenge for us, but certainly in terms of the core instruction and some of the offerings that Sloan has, it's a really special program. It's a special program, and our kids have had great success there. It's also wonderful that it's housed next to our Achieve program, so to see those students interact is really unique and I think mutually beneficial. And it's actually a privilege for the staff to be a part of that as well. So what we wanted to come before you tonight is, and I guess nod of approval seems to be the word, is that, and it was interesting, there was a report on Sloan School done way back in December of 2003, and they even mentioned what we come before you tonight back in this report, and that is to explore younger grades. Right now it's at the high school. I think I put the quote back in the 2003 report. By 2008, they were ambitious. It would be advised that we explore including a younger population in this program to the extent that it might diminish or provide earlier intervention programming for at-risk students. So we're a few years behind that recommendation, but we would like to explore the possibility of broadening our scope at the Sloan School. We have seen more behaviors, if you will, at our middle schools. Behaviors that I would say typically were reserved for the high school, now have migrated at the middle level. So we do think this could be beneficial for students, and certainly the family would be very involved in that process. We often say too at Sloan, kids can graduate through Sloan, through their 12th grade year, and they have a diploma from North or South, but it doesn't have to be a permanent placement. And sometimes it's best if it's not a permanent placement. And it's just an opportunity for an intervention or remediation, a different educational milieu, get the students back where they need to be, and then we reintegrate them back to their home school. And that, I think, would be especially important if we explore 7th and 8th grade, because I wouldn't necessarily want to, have broaden it to 7th and 8th grade and have that be a permanent placement for students for that duration of time. So those are things that we would have to consider. But I look forward to doing the work with Mr. Devlin and Dr. Murphy and the team at Sloan if that is something that the board wishes for us to pursue.
Great. Questions or comments from the board members?
It's a great idea.
Ms. Osaki?
Yeah, I think it's terrific. I just was kind of curious, so we have 40 students there now from the high schools. I've been in that building a couple of times. How much more, is there additional space, like facilities-wise?
Very good.
And so there's maybe one classroom, there's additional classroom there that we can easily fit into, and maybe some jostling around if we needed to find maybe another classroom.
Awesome. That's terrific, thank you.
We also have just, and Ryan, you can jump in here too, but we also have that there's been some flexibility built into that building when the building was built. So the large group room that I'm sure you were in, we can divide that. We've gone over and taken, just a first-hand look at space. It may require doing some juggling inside the building, but we think we can do it.
Awesome.
even as it stands today, there is the one additional classroom up front in the building if you're walking in through the front saloon doors on the right. And then to Dr. Sanko's point, we have those dividers, so we could further divide one of those rooms. Additionally, there's 2 additional offices off to the side where some additional small group instruction could take place.
Great. I think also I would just to mention, I spoke to Mr. Devlin about this, that, with the need that the cabinet is seeing and administrators and teachers for this to be inclusive of the middle schoolers, that there are already students that are needing this. There is currently in our district not really a place for them, so this offers an opportunity for those students that aren't able to get what they're needing currently at our middle schools. So it offers those additional students or a handful of families that are kind of stuck in an alternative and to stay also within Council Rock and not have to seek outside resources. And other than that, I know I've talked with Dr. Murphy and also having toured the facility extensively that this is a family decision. That's done in coordination with families and the students and Dr. Murphy. And I truly do appreciate that it's not like you get placed there, there's an entry process, there's an exit process, that's all would be a part of the plan. So I think you get unanimous head nods to continue the work for that. Thank you, appreciate it.
Mr. Hickey, did you have a question?
No.
Oh, I thought I saw.
I think it's a great idea, it's a great idea to explore.
All right, so then we have a couple, public, I don't know if there's any individuals for public comment today. If you have an agenda item and can speak to it in about 3 minutes, if you can name. Please state your name and township.
Sure, my name is Barry Moore, I'm the clerk of Township, and I'm very happy and pleased that this board and the administration is working forward on the full-day kindergarten. I realize it's a very complicated issue. As I mentioned, I have 7 grandkids who are in the Council Rock program. I have my 4-year-old today, Lily, that went to a dance class. We talked to a bunch of mothers there about full-day kindergarten. And to be honest, everybody's surprised. What do you mean, you full-day kindergarten? I thought we owned that. This is Council Rock, why not? And I said, no, unfortunately, we're working on it, but we don't have it. That's a surprise of it. The other thing is we talked a little bit tonight about the alternative programs we have, like you go to Rainbow Academy in the morning and go to Little Crest in the afternoon. All those classes are full now. I mean, my grandson Leo, who's 5, we can't find anything at Rainbow Academy or any of the other programs. It's very difficult to do. And I take Nicole's point, which is a good point, that it's difficult when you go to like Rainbow Academy in the morning and hop on a school bus and then come back. It's a very difficult program. So, I think if we have it all in place, we have something for the kids. The last thing, I did talk to the senior center. I'm the board supervisor from Northampton, Grant, and different things, and talked to a lot of people. And there's a lot of momentum, a lot of positive feedback from people saying, wow, this is something we really need to do. Went to the senior center, and a lot of people are concerned about seniors, and they maybe have fixed incomes or have issues into that. They're like, what do you mean we do have full-day kindergarten? Of course we have. I have full-day kindergarten. I was a kid, why don't we have? I'm like, that's what we're working on. That's what we're working on. 2 other things I'll tell you, I'm kind of a math person. I told you when I first spoke at the last school board meeting, the number 13. And as I said before, 87% of the school districts in the state of Pennsylvania, 500 school districts, 87% have full-day kindergarten. All the way to Pittsburgh, New York, all across the state. We're part of the 13% that does not. Okay, that's an issue. A lot of the ones that do not have it are having changes now. Like Centennial's doing it, South Boston's doing it, all the other schools are doing it. I know it's an issue of cost. I mean, it costs money. I get all that concept. So, of the 500 school districts in the state of Pennsylvania, what do you think we rank, Councilor? Top half? We have to be top half, right? Maybe top 25%? Top 10%? Top 5%? We're ranked number 5 out of 500. So we're in the top 1% of all school districts in the state of Pennsylvania for wealth. So it's very difficult to understand or comprehend how we're in the bottom 13 not having it, yet we're a very local community. It's something people expect. And I'm not saying it in any way. I'm very supportive. I think it's a great concept. Everybody's working towards it. And it's something that it's going to be complicated, but we just need to move forward on this. And I'm very pleased with the board for doing this. The other last thing I mentioned is the Sloan School. I had one of my sons is,
Sorry.
Yeah,
sorry, I'm sorry.
My nephew was severely autistic. And I wish he had a program on the Sloan School. That would have been excellent. He was in Connecticut, but that's an excellent program. So I fully support that concept on that. Thank you very much for your time, sir.
Thank you so much. Okay. You have any other comments? Okay, all right, thank you. All right, anything else that,
Yeah, just talking about the scores, I'm hoping in a future education committee meeting, we can dive into these ESSA Keystone scores and analyze them from a school-to-school basis and try to understand what this district can do to help them. I don't imagine anybody has an objection to that.
no, I don't think so. And I've actually brought up, there's also relevant data regarding, we've heard the cabinet administration talk about MTSS data. So in the beginning of this year, mid-year MTSS evaluations took place. So we had already kind of discussed about some of those results as well. Mr. Hickey?
Just to piggyback on that, something you mentioned earlier, would it also be possible to get Dr. Barnes back in here?
So we can get Dr. Barnes here. Dr. Barnes may not be here, but he's still doing his work. We're still looking at data points. Somebody mentioned earlier, I think Mr. Roosevelt, maybe you, when Dr. Barnes pointed out some break points in third grade. We still have Dr. Barnes on speed dial, and he's helping us with some of that work and some other stuff, so sure.
Thanks.
Okay. I think that concludes our education committee meeting this evening. Thank you all so much.
Thank you.
Have a great evening.